Brendan, we've talked about odds to win the race. It's now time to start talking about the DraftKings top three. And no big surprise, again, just sort of like the odds to win the race. We see Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch as the three guys at the top. But, we talked about how we saw some comers and goers at Pocono. We saw Eric Jones getting in the top three, and he's at plus 650 in the top three. So,
and an Eric Almirola.
And Eric Almirola,
and he's at 10-1.
And he's at 10-1. So I think the one thing that, and I think that's something people have to get in mind. Don't look at the top three as picking a winner, but looking at a guy that's going to be consistent, who's going to run well, who's going to be up near the front. Because, look, at a place like Indianapolis, you could conceivably be 8 or 10 seconds off the lead and still finish in the top three.
Well, and we've just talked about who's the most consistent guy that has been top 5 weeks in a row, and that is Eric Almirola. He's coming off 2 straight top 10s there with organizations that were not, he's been at Stewart-Haas where he was kind of the odd man out, and he's had 2 top 10s in a row.
And I definitely think he's a guy to take a look at because I think he's going to run well. I think we know that guys like Eric Jones and Eric Almirola are a couple guys that have got some longer odds who are going to run well when they get to Indianapolis.
And a 5th and a 3rd makes me look at him and say, hey, wait a second. 3rd and 5th in the 2 races I said are identical to this. Eric Jones being there Eric Almirola is definitely someone I should look at. And Eric Jones with 1 race in the top, a second place finish, 3 data points, second place in 2018. I got to like those returns right there on those guys. I mean, having Brad Keselowski at 200 or Joey Logano 200, yeah. Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, the 2 guys we said are the hottest in the sport, 350s. Yeah, okay, that's right. Clint Boyer's even good at 650. He's great at this place. But I like those deep numbers there more so than I like the Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin. I think those might be locks, but...
Well, and I think that's the thing. I mean, you see, I'm almost surprised that as a plus number beside those 2 guys.
I think that Kevin Harvick plus 115 is pretty slim. I'm surprised he isn't maybe a minus.
Remember last year we saw Kyle Busch in the minus category in the
Martin
top 3.
Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick last couple of years. We've had minus numbers.
Correct.
So I mean, without practice, fortunately, we know that number is not going to change drastically, except for betting. But I think that Kevin Harvick might get to a minus number before the start of the race.
Now let's start looking at some of the driver head-to-head matchups, and we've got some big numbers in the driver head-to-heads. I mean, one that just and Brendan, this just completely flies off the page at me. Martin Truex Jr. is a plus 160 against Kevin Harvick. Now, look, I know Kevin Harvick was one of the 2 best cars without a question at Pocono, but I remember how many times Martin Truex Jr. has run really, really well at Indianapolis. In fact, one year he and Kyle Busch were clearly the class of the field.
And they wrecked each other.
And they took each other out going into turn 1. I just think that number is just ridiculous.
I mean, they're taking that number off of recent history where Martin Truex has 3 horrible races in a row. I get it.
Well, they weren't horrible races. His result was
horrible finishes in a row. But Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch had that amazing battle where they wrecked each other and Joe Gibbs was just pulling his hair out. And
the Martin Truex Jr. wasn't racing for Joe Gibbs then.
It was
he was at Furniture Road.
I mean, but still, I like Martin Truex Jr. a lot on a 165 against Kyle Busch, who I say I'm fading lately. That's a decent enough spot for me to go on a superstar like Martin Truex and go, okay, he was 6th to Kyle's 5th on Saturday, and Martin Truex was 10th, where Kyle Busch was the class on Sunday until the wreck. So,
well, and another number that just kind of leaps out at me is that, and I know it's Denny Hamlin against Kevin Harvick, but Denny Hamlin's getting a plus number at 115. Now, to me, that's even to me. I don't know how you differentiate between those 2 guys.
Yeah, that should be more of a pick'em or a minus 110 across the board. Denny Hamlin plus 115, worth it to jump on that. I mean, you're going against Kevin, who we're saying is the 2 favorites. So, but it shouldn't be that big of a discrepancy. I look at those, and I like to look at a minus number. Eric Jones minus 135 to a plus 115. Kurt Busch. I don't see Kurt Busch being anywhere in the same zip code as Eric Jones, especially after looking at Pocono results.
Well, that's why Eric's a minus 135.
But I like that. I would take the minus number.
You would take Eric Jones on that minus 135 there, even there's not much return on it.
Doesn't matter. You're going to be that's a bet that's winnable to me. I think that's the easiest bet on the board.
And you're probably going to pick that in the last segment just to make me have to do the math when I have to add everything up this week.
If you need me to take over the scoring, don't worry, I won't cheat.
You went to Georgetown. You ought to be able to figure that out. Well, I think I like seeing some of these numbers where I see plus signs on. Like, how often do we see a plus sign beside Kyle Busch?
Not often.
And we got him at plus 115 against Kevin Harvick.
But I'd take the minus 135 on that.
You don't think at some point Kyle Busch is going to break through?
I think he will. But if you're telling me that Kyle Busch has to win the race to beat Kevin Harvick, who I think is going to win the race, I like the minus number on that also.
Well, and here's another one and I don't know why these are jumping off the page to me a little bit more than normal this week. Chase Elliott is a plus 130 against Brad Keselowski.
Well, I like the Chase Elliott plus 105 against Joey Logano minus 125. Brad Keselowski to me has arguably been better than Joey Logano. And last week Brad wasn't half bad, 9th on Saturday, but Joey Logano, like you said, was abysmal both races. And Chase Elliott was not abysmal both races. So plus 105, there's a lot of head-to-heads here that you can make some decent money with.
Right, and a lot of weeks you and I don't spend much time on the head-to-heads because we don't like them. But this week, I just think there's some intrigue on the head-to-heads.
I could bet 3 or 4 of my units this week on the head-to-heads because I like what I see there head-to-head wise.
Well, we got about a minute and a half left in this segment, so we can move ahead a little bit to our group.
Let's get to Group A at least.
You and I love the group matchup, so let's take a look at Group A to start with. And holy smokes, that number on Martin Truex Jr.
plus 345.
Plus 345.
But I think that's the right number. If you look at Kyle Busch was class of the field Sunday till he got wrecked. Kevin Harvick dominated one day. Denny Hamlin dominated another day. To me, right, Martin Truex Jr. at plus 345 is the rightful dog.
It's almost like you're saying, well, somebody's got to be the fourth guy in Group A, so let's just make it MTJ. But at the same time, if you're going to put odds on him that are that long, that high, then it's kind of worth
it's enticing.
Taking a flyer, right?
That's what's great about gambling, Jeff. That's why there's an underdog, and the number can grow if you think it's they try to entice you with that number. That 345 number is the most enticing number you and I have ever seen on this show in a group matchup. That might be the highest odd we've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen plus 345, and we're gonna as we get through the groups, we're gonna see another high number, but not quite as high as 345. Now, Group B is almost an entire group of what I would say were underachievers at Pocono. Keselowski had a pretty good car on Sunday, kind of got off on the pit sequence a little bit, but Logano,
horrible,
terrible. Chase Elliott was okay, and Blaney went a lap down.
Chase Elliott got a 4th on Sunday, but he wasn't a factor. So
right, it was almost like, wow. He finished 4th?
Yeah, you kind of did the old Ryan Newman. Hey, he finished top 10.
I know. You find some of those guys and you just look up and all of a